my eye! Just kidding, it's makeup. Although sophisticates will be able to rationalize the movie as an argument against the behavior it shows, my guess is that the audience will like the behavior, but not the argument. Certainly they'll buy tickets because they can see Pitt and Norton pounding on each other. A lot more people will leave this movie and get in fights than will leave it discussing Tyler Durden's moral philosophy. The images in movies like this argue for themselves. It takes a lot of narration to argue against them. So that is a review from famous and esteemed film critic and personal hero of mine, Roger Ebert, regarding the 1999 classic Fight Club. So I personally have idolized Ebert since I was old enough to understand what film critique was. He's able to take what would otherwise kind of be like surface level analysis and turn it into something very wordy and poetic. I really think he's a pioneer of the art form. However, I do think he's wrong here. So for those who don't know, Fight Club is an adaptation of a novel of the same name by Chuck Paulanik. This novel I had not read, actually, until I decided that I wanted to write the script for this video. And I think there's a lot of different ways to interpret it. However, I see a certain subsect of people who interpret the movie as this glorification of this hyper-masculinity, this love letter to getting sweaty and naked with your bros and beating the shit out of each other. I really don't think that's what it is, and I think the people that say that's what it is are kind of being willfully ignorant. So, quick disclaimer, just off the top, I don't think Fight Club is a perfect movie. I think it's a little hammy and can get a little messy, especially in like the middle act. And I think a lot of that, honestly, is due to the novel, which is a little messier in its philosophy than the actual film is. However, I do think that there is enough evidence to make a strong argument that Fight Club isn't about how awesome it is to be a big, strong guy, and rather it is a rejection of that philosophy and that worldview, that hypermasculinity rules, right? That it's this cool thing to be a big, strong man. I think the movie is pretty apt and pretty precise in its rejections of those tenets. And so I would like to get into that a little bit here today. Now, obviously, there are a lot of people online and in real life who watch this movie and have the response of like, holy shit, Tyler Durden is fantastic.
Advertising has us chasing cars and clothes, working jobs we hate so we can buy shit we don't need.
This movie is a how-to guide for some people.
We've all been raised on television to believe that one day we'd all be millionaires and movie gods and rock stars, but we won't. We're slowly learning that fact. Very, very pissed off.
Yeah. This is my Bible, right? I want to live my life like this guy. I want to reject the man. I want to embrace nihilism. And through that lens, I do really understand where a lot of these critics are coming from that want to reject this movie on that basis. Yes, Tyler Durden looks really fucking cool. If and when I was a dumb high schooler, I thought he was really cool and I kind of wanted to be like him. So that should, in theory, be a checkmate for the argument that this movie is encouraging toxic masculinity. But I know it's annoying to say this, but I think that's kind of the point. So, toxic masculinity. I want my use of this phrase to come off as clinical as possible. I want it to be less of the like hyper-utilized buzzword that you see all the time on Twitter. So I'm going to read you the literal Webster's dictionary definition of the phrase toxic masculinity. Toxic masculinity is an attitude or set of social guidelines stereotypically associated with manliness that often have a negative impact on men, women, and society in general. So, how does that relate to the movie? Quick heads up, if you haven't seen Fight Club for some fucking reason, I'm about to spoil like what is one of the most iconic twists in all of pop culture history. So go watch the movie, come back, and then I'll tell you why you should think it's good. Tyler Durden is a construct of the narrator's imagination. Obviously, he's an extension of the subconscious mind. He is everything the narrator wants to be. He is the perfect man. He fucks real good.
My God, I haven't been fucked like that since grade school.
He fights real good. He looks fucking fly as shit in Hawaiian shirts. He is this laissez-faire cowboy that in his fantasy existence somehow is also the realest man alive. He sticks it to power.
I look like you want to look, I fuck like you want to fuck, I am smart, capable, and most importantly, I'm free in all the ways that you are not.
Everyone wants to either fuck him or be him, and for most people, it's both. The narrator over the course of the movie only ever becomes Tyler when he needs to achieve something hyper-masculine and extreme. There's the Fight Club shit, there's all the acts of domestic terrorism, there's fucking Helena Bonham Carter, which is potentially the craziest feat that anyone pulls off in this movie. I think it's important to take a sidebar here and mention that Chuck Paulanik, the author of this novel, is famously a gay man. And I don't think that that is necessarily relevant outside of the fact that I think toxic masculinity historically affects queer people in a way that it does not affect straight people. So of course Paulanik is going to have a very unique view on masculinity and specifically the pressures of masculinity. I think in a lot of cases the urge to be big and masculine and straight and narrow and really fit into that box of manhood can veer people away from who they really are, what their real identity is. I did not come out as bisexual until I was 17 years old, but I knew for way longer than that. I grew up in a relatively small, relatively traditional community, so it was really easy for me I'm entirely cisgendered, I'm entirely masculine presenting, so it was very easy to write off those feelings. It's just like, oh, I really want to be friends with this boy, and to take out whatever like repressed feelings of homosexual attraction I had in the form of just like juvenile violence and just kind of like being a bully.
He made it look like he was like, stop!
Which I know might not seem really relevant, but when you think of the context of what is happening within the movie Fight Club, it becomes a lot more relevant really quickly. Now, Chuck Paulanik has stated on no uncertain terms that this movie is not about being gay. I am not one to go against the artist's intent for the source material and the screenplay that he later helped write. However, he's also publicly bashed the books being co-opted by incels, and he bullies them pretty severely for missing the point of the novel entirely. And I think that notion gives more credence to the idea that Tyler Durden, like this big bad Ubermensch, is toxic masculinity. The idea that the creator of the novel himself rejects the people that see the movie and want to be like him. You guys are stupid. Tyler is the bad guy. He is the voice inside of my head and every man's head that tells them, like, fuck who you are. You know, you're not macho enough. You need to grow a beard. You need to start a harem. You need to, like, rear end the guy that just cut you off in traffic. These violent, sexual, deep male urges that are inside of everyone. He represents that, and he represents that voice inside of American consumerist culture. This urge for rejection, for individualism from the pack, and how alienating those urges can ultimately be. Something that to me gives this theory stability are the moments where Tyler appears, both within the context of the book and within the context of the movie. In the movie, Tyler and the narrator meet on an airplane when the narrator is particularly miserable and he's wishing for death. In the book, Tyler first arrives on a nude beach when the narrator is feeling really insecure about his body, and when Tyler pulls up, he's like super ripped and he's got this big swinging dick, and he's like carrying a piece of driftwood over his back, this huge phallic Freudian thing. It's super homoerotic, and Yeah, you understand what I'm implying here. Really cool visual motif that's used throughout the movie is Tyler randomly appearing in these rogue frames. That the implication is that they were sliced in, but you know, the reel of the film is used as a double entendre for the mind. Now Tyler first appears super briefly when the narrator is told that he doesn't know what real pain is.
Want to see pain? Swing by First Methodist Tuesday nights. See the guys with testicular cancer. That's pain.
I kind of see that as an indicator that, you know, if he was a real man, he would understand real pain, right? Tyler appears on screen when the narrator is told to open himself up.
So let's all of us here follow Thomas's good example and really open ourselves up. Did you find a partner?
In total non sequitur side note, one of my favorite details in the movie is that when the narrator is ordered to view his spirit animal, right? What is his soul animal? And he goes to his special cave with his soul animal. It's played off as a joke that the narrator's soul animal is an emperor penguin. Something worth noting is that emperor penguins are some of the best dads in nature, famously. Emperor penguins are fantastic fathers. They help raise the chick from birth. And I think it's really interesting that an animal particularly characterized for being a good, tender father is played off as a joke. Like, why would I want to be that? I don't think that that's a coincidence. And if you do, I don't care. I think you're wrong. Also, another sidebar worth mentioning is that the ultimate punishment in this movie, even held higher than death in some cases, is the removal of one's testicles, one's scrotum, one's nuts get fucking removed from their body. First, it's life. Right? Life is removing the balls from the men who have testicular cancer. And then later, Project Mayhem takes and weaponizes this exact same emasculation that was radicalizing men in the first place. I do not think it is a coincidence that something that is so consistently focused on throughout the movie is the literal destruction of one's manhood. Literally, your manhood, your junk is getting removed from your body. And this helps explain why Tyler Durden's philosophy speaks to such a large army of exclusively men, both within the context of the novel and within the context of our real world. He appeals to that toxic masculinity, that intrinsic destructive male drive to be this kind of like self-destructive anarchy machine. And I honestly think that on a metatextual level, this movie gets more credit in my eyes for how it is actually able to make the character who's supposed to, oh, Jesus Christ. That was so loud. The character who uses that toxic masculinity to lure in weak, disenfranchised men. And that same character's philosophy appeals to weak and disenfranchised men within the context of the real world. I think that only proves the movie's point. And by handing these incels this savior figure, while it appeals to them, is actively mocking them. That is such a crazy meta act of satire. Right? It's pointing out something that is so ever present in our society. These men who have nothing, right? Have had their balls literally removed by the shackles of consumerism. And it gives them this God figure who is simultaneously kind of deferring to their every desire while also mocking them. Up on screen, I'm playing video footage from a town in my vicinity that was breaking up literal fight clubs. It took place among high schoolers. I also bullied my little brother to giving comment because he was also involved in a local mock fight club. About the fight club that you were involved in.
It should be enough or should not be?
The fight club that you were involved in that got broken up by the police.
Oh. I used to be in this underground boxing group, and we used to just do boxing for fun. And this one fucking kid, he ended up getting knocked out, and we had to call the ambulance. That shit's good.
How would you characterize the formation of this crew, this culture? What was the inspiration for this?
They're the type of guys who they liked Rick and Morty, and they liked Fight Club, and they liked Wolf of Wall Street, but for like all the wrong reasons. They're like, oh yeah, drugs rule, and like we should all like fight each other all the time.
What is the mother take on this
This
scenario?
is upsetting for me.
If you were representing a character in a movie as the embodiment of toxic masculinity and the perils and temptations of it, the character is naturally going to be really enticing to the demographics who are vulnerable to toxic masculinity. I am a personal believer that anyone should be able to enjoy and take in art regardless of age. However, I do think that this is a movie that honestly kinda should have a barrier of entry on it. I think some of the philosophies can be kind of damaging to people who aren't able to take a nuanced look at what exactly this movie is trying to say. And I think particularly no young man under the age of 16 should be watching Fight Club. Tyler is a really cool villain because his philosophy is so enticing. It's this kind of like heroin-y kiss of death that if you have like a certain amount of life experience and you understand like, oh, it's not cool to be that kind of guy who takes what he wants and ruins people's lives on a whim. You can see the movie and be like, wow, it's cool. He's cool. Obviously, I don't want to be like him, but he's cool. But if you're a teenager who is feeling that like neurochemical cocktail that's swirling around in your brain and you need something to glom onto to give you that sense of identity, I think Tyler Durden, unfortunately, as a character, is really easy to do that with. So in a way, I do defer to Roger Ebert in the movie's other detractors. I do kind of think that they were right that the untrained eye watching this movie could find some really damaging ideas in it. However, I don't know if that necessarily serves as a valid criticism because that's literally what the point of the movie is. And then the film's entire third act revolves around exactly why this character, this villain who is building up this philosophy, was super wrong. And ends with us killing him for being super wrong. Not to be like presumptuous, but if you manage to miss that, if you manage to miss that ethical beat within the context of the movie, I feel like that says way more about you than it does about Fight Club. So yeah, I do think that Fight Club really fucking rocks. I understand that that's not an unpopular opinion. I understand that I am siding with the majority here, but I thought it would be fun to kind of land a pot shot at the people who I think kind of deliberately misunderstand this movie because they want to be able to side against something that's popular, while also equally landing a pot shot at the people who are just like too fucking stupid. Zero critical thinking, zero media literacy, literally the kinds of guys who watched The Dark Knight and thought that like Heath Ledger like blowing up hospitals was like a cool thing.
I'm the Joker, baby!
I think Fight Club has further cemented itself as a truly great movie as time goes by. And I think one of the main reasons for that is what this movie and novel were both addressing that was going on in the 90s. Postmodern, annoying, incel-y rejection of society at large as a result of like capitalist alienation that has obviously only gotten worse with the social media age. And that brings me to what I ultimately wanted to address by making this entire video. So, unfortunately, it's really fucking impossible to go anywhere on the internet today without seeing one of these weird, like John Wayne style douchebags that use fake inspirational speaker style talking points to kind of sell young men this idea that we are better because we are men and that we are better because we are straight. These communities prioritize physical imposition and violence over genuine community building and compassion, which I would argue isn't super manly, dude. Now, these people will tell you that their biggest value is critical thinking, but then whenever you actually try to have like a thoughtful conversation with these people, they always lead back to the same talking points of like, We need to separate ourselves from women, and we need to work out.
Fuck you, ho. You ain't gonna do shit. Suck dick and cook.
And that is ultimately like what all of their values boil down to, aside from like, I don't know, doing like fucking drop shipping scams, like, or whatever stupid bullshit these people are on. All of these rabbit holes will inevitably lead you to the same place of threats of violence and like bigotry, largely against gay people, but just kind of bigotry across the board.
And that's the reason homosexuality is genuinely outlawed in these countries. Not because they fear what two full-grown men are going to do. They fear what's happened in the West. It's what two full-grown men are going to purport on the minds of children which aren't theirs.
Now, obviously, for the average Fight Club enjoyer, these concepts are really familiar, because this is literally what Tyler Durden was fucking selling over the course of the movie, is this idea that we need to break away from society and we as men need to lift each other up. But it's also like that kind of randy and radical individualism, and we need to stick it to the institution. Now, obviously, there's a little bit of disconnect, because in Fight Club, it is a lot more nihilistic, and the dudes who are doing this online currently view it as some sort of like annoying self-help trend.
So I would just like to give you an Alpha M knuckle bump for being so damn incredible. If you'd reciprocate, I would appreciate one of these.
But I still think that the point in the parallel stands. Obviously, at the center of all of this is Andrew Tate, who is just the fucking poster boy for this weird generation of anti-women young men.
Fuck the woman! Fuck the woman!
What? No, wait. We love women. We love women. We love women.
But not like transgenders.
Yes, sir. We love everybody. No.
All gays should die!
Yeah, merch, preach. What have I done?
When people espouse this type of rhetoric, it mirrors the inner voice and position of the specter of Tyler Durden. He's this like ethereal presence, and he tells you not to listen to society and say fuck everybody else and focus on exclusively your needs, and that no damn woman will ever tell you what to do. I think it speaks to an alienation in our real world, just like Fight Club speaks to the alienation of their fictional world. I think everyone who participates in Fight Club and the subsequent Project Mayhem within the context of the novel was pushed to that point by a world that doesn't really give a shit if these guys live or die. They only exist to be products, to be cogs in the machine. And while obviously that was hella real in like the cubicle-ridden corporate world of the 90s, but that's fucking so much more real today, man, where even our own leisure time is completely predicated on us like suckling from the teat of Silicon Valley, like hoping for a single hit of dopamine from like a dog video, right? That shit gets really alienating really fucking fast. So I think based on that, the modern young man who is radicalized by someone like Andrew Tate, for just an example, he's radicalized by his own commodification in this social media focused society. So I think the conditions that created Project Mayhem within the world of Fight Club are more real now than ever. And I don't want to be like the old man who's shaking his fist at the sky, but just think of how constantly you are being sold something, you are being peddled something, and think about how often you actually feel valued as an individual. When was the last time you feel like society gave you an opportunity to prove something of yourself outside of that you can buy? And I think, unfortunately, social alienation that's present in a social media centric society, in that kind of IKEA catalog lifestyle that is expressed in Fight Club, unfortunately draw men together to kind of mourn this sense of masculinity that might not have ever existed. Remaining men together in the beginning of Fight Club, the testicular cancer support group, I think serves as a pretty decent one-to-one comparison of these early stages, that kind of tip of the iceberg for the manosphere that will eventually spiral you down the rabbit hole into the weird fucking super anti-women, super anti-LGBT rhetorical minefields that a lot of these young men eventually find themselves in. I think that the Proud Boys or the Boogaloo Boys are honestly a pretty fucking fantastic stand-in for Project Mayhem as these groups of disenfranchised, displaced young men who are lashing out as violent and rhetorical because they were unfortunately never really taught to be anything else. I think perhaps the most important line in Fight Club is the line referring to a generation of men raised by women. And that notion is the catalyst that eventually leads to societal collapse.
I'm a 30-year-old boy.
We're a generation of men raised by women. I'm wondering if another woman is really the answer we need.
I think poor male role models are a massive cause for this type of social alienation, both within the context of Fight Club, but also within the context of our real world. Men biochemically are inherently angrier and more impulsive than women are. I don't mean to get all gender science here, but it's literally wired into men. Testosterone functions in a way that was meant to make us very impulsive, fearless protectors, so the rest of the tribe of women and children can peacefully forage for nuts and berries while we all go chasing after saber-toothed tigers and shit. Now, obviously, this doesn't mean that all men are violent monsters, but I do think it does mean that all men have the capability to be violent monsters. I think that highlights the importance of positive male role models who can show young men, okay, you are bigger than the other sex, you are more physically imposing, and you are far more impulsive. Let's teach you how to deal with that in a way that is positive and not damaging. And I think without a good role model, I think a lot of young men are at risk of becoming cruel and demanding and, again, impulsive. And I think that goes for cis men. I think that goes for trans men. It is just more built into our biochemical makeup. And I think if you look at statistics in the real world, a lot of the places that these dangerous Proud Boy type ideologies tend to come from are regions of the country where one-parent households are a lot more common. And that leaves a lot of these young men without positive male role models. And eventually will lead them to look online to these kinds of comforting father figure types who are telling them, no, you are a good, strong young man and you have to go seize the day. And then use that Trojan horse of emotional paternal comfort as a way to backdoor in these really fucking dangerous, often fascist ideologies. Of course, I personally am speaking largely from experience on this, because when I was a much younger man, I was operating with the eye of the external societal factors that I was discussing before that kind of made me repress my own bisexuality and made me want to be that big macho dude who was running around and beating shit up and doing acts of petty vandalism. And unfortunately, those led me down some pretty dangerous rabbit holes. What was like the 2014 era internet equivalent of the manosphere. I think that there's a really real world where I was born 6 years later and became a tater tot. If Andrew Tate was anywhere near as influential as he is now, when I was younger, I would have fucking bought it. But gratefully, I had men in my life at the time who were able to show me positive examples of masculinity, served as positive archetypes of men, serve as the protector or whatever a lot of these guys try to sell, but also are sensitive and caring and are in touch with their own emotions and the emotions of their family. These men, who I will remain grateful for forever, were willing to lend their ears and compassion to anyone regardless of sex or background. And this kindness is what shaped my vision of masculinity and ultimately into the man that I wanted to become. And sure, I'm a big, strong dude and I like fucking hiking and carbo loading and watching Scorsese movies, but also I can listen to the Spice Girls and I totally prefer margaritas to straight whiskey, and that's fine. And I think that is why Fight Club now is almost more relevant than it has ever been. I think it highlights the way evil ideologies within a society that wants to exploit you can take advantage of that neurochemical soup inside of our heads as men that makes us volatile. I think there's a Tyler Durden within the head of every young man and motivating him based on his own disenfranchisement. And I have seen very intelligent young men become this stubborn, misanthropic, quote unquote rebel. All you do is just stew in your own masculine misery. And I'm pretty confident in myself and I'm pretty confident in my masculinity, but I would be lying if I didn't hear that voice whisper to me from time to time and tell me that I need to be more macho, that I need to go out and break something or someone in order to be seen as this big, strong man. And while I might know better, it doesn't make that voice any less real. And every time I rewatch this movie, it reminds me why I had to kill that voice to begin with. I think I'm all done. Goodbye.